The sky split open. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't lightning. It was something else, deeper, sharper, and colder than anything Earth had ever known. A crack across the heavens, like glass shattering in slow motion, glowing red at the edges, stretching from horizon to horizon. People stopped where they stood. Drivers left cars running in the streets. Children clutched their parents. Even the birds froze mid-flight, confused by the rift in their sky. For a few long moments, Earth held its breath. It had been almost 6 years since first contact. But there was no peace treaty, no grand alliance. There was only silence and fear. The galaxy had watched us from afar, measuring, waiting, judging. When they finally came close enough to speak, it wasn't to welcome us. It was to warn us, or maybe threaten us. The Council of Nine had spoken through translators and screens, their strange forms cloaked in light and illusion. Earth was not to expand. Not into the drift zones. Not beyond the asteroid belts. Not into the worlds the Council had claimed, long before humanity even discovered faster-than-light travel. But humans, we don't stop at warnings. We don't kneel to strangers we've never met. We build. We fight. We survive. And somewhere in deep orbit, just beyond the dark face of Jupiter, something ancient, something silent, was waiting. The Hurricane class. There had only ever been one. Even now, the name wasn't spoken aloud in public broadcasts. It had been built in secret, under black-budget programs, wrapped in misinformation and orbital static. Some said it wasn't even a ship, more like a floating continent armed with weapons that broke the laws of physics. Others whispered it held a crew that no longer aged, that it had never returned to port once it left. But tonight, as that sky tore apart and the air turned to glass, every orbital defense station linked to Earth's security grid received the same message. Do not interfere. Hurricane class is active. For a brief instant, the message repeated. Then the satellites went dark. On the ground, in a small monitoring station buried beneath Icelandic rock and glacial ice, a technician blinked at his screen. His fingers hovered just above the keys, hesitant. The alerts pouring in didn't make sense. Gravitational anomalies, electromagnetic echoes, unidentified heat signatures pulsing from deep orbit. He reached for the comms, but the signal died before he could speak. "What's happening?" asked the woman beside him, her voice low and shaky. He didn't answer. He couldn't. There was something in his chest, an instinct raw and cold. Something older than fear. He looked at the final frozen image on his display before the power cut. A silhouette rising from behind the curve of Earth's atmosphere. Massive. Wrong. Beautiful. Like a cathedral built for war. It had returned. Above, in low Earth orbit, every civilian satellite was caught in a strange feedback loop. The kind of distortion only caused by gravity waves or cloaked movement. But nothing should be moving up there. Not this fast. Not this precisely. And then the sky flashed white. Not a weapon. Not yet. It was a warning. Across the planet, old soldiers woke from dreams filled with static and fire. They'd felt this before. Not in battle, but in testing chambers, deep inside locked bunkers where no phones worked and no names were spoken. The Hurricane class had always left an impression. It was a ship designed not just to destroy, but to terrify. No one outside the classified programs had ever seen it in full. Until now. A schoolteacher in Nairobi paused mid-lesson as the clouds twisted overhead into a slow spiral. She looked up, her students silent and wide-eyed. Something shimmered just above the stratosphere, too high for a plane, too controlled for a storm. In Tokyo, an astronomer stared through a broken telescope lens, still blinking from the flash. She didn't move. The instrument had melted. Literally. And still, she felt like something was watching her. In orbit, ships from 3 alien fleets began to slow. Not Earth ships. Not friendly. Not anymore. They had entered near-Earth space with precision, positioning themselves above major cities. It was meant to intimidate. To test our response time. But now they held still, waiting. Because something had moved between them. The Hurricane class didn't broadcast a signal. It didn't light up sensors. It didn't hum or shimmer or announce itself. It just was. A presence. A shape carved out of nothing, blacker than space itself. It hovered there like a forgotten god. Silent. Patient. One of the alien ships tried to reposition. It vanished. No explosion. No warning. Just gone. That's when the second message arrived. This is humanity's sky. 3 languages. 1 voice. Human. Cold. Tired. Mel. Across the council fleets, chaos broke out. Signals scrambled. Weapons powered on. But none of them fired. Not yet. They were waiting, trying to understand what they were seeing, trying to figure out why Earth had built something this terrifying. They didn't understand. This wasn't Earth's response to a future threat. This was Earth's memory of war. This was everything we had learned from surviving our own kind. The Hurricane class had been built for one reason only: deterrence through fear. Not diplomacy. Not defense. It was humanity's answer to the question no one ever asked aloud. What if the galaxy tried to take Earth from us? Now, that answer had unfolded in orbit. And in the command deck of that monster, surrounded by silence, a single figure stood watching the fractured sky. His eyes were not calm. His face was not proud. He looked sad, heavy with memory. He whispered something under his breath that no one could hear. And then he gave the order. What followed wasn't an attack. Not yet. It was a demonstration. The sky didn't just split again. It ripped. The fabric of visible space folded inward, revealing a shape buried within hyperspace, tethered only by will and software older than half the world's satellites. It looked like a wing. But it wasn't made for flight. It was made to cut. Down below, the people of Earth didn't know if they should cheer, run, or pray. Because in the span of 15 minutes, every alien ship in orbit had gone silent. Some powered down. Some drifted away. Some simply disappeared from sensors as if the universe had blinked and forgotten them. But one ship remained, larger than the rest. Its commander had not moved. A challenge. And the Hurricane class began to turn. Slow. Silent. Purposeful. And then, the lights on its hull changed. It was preparing to speak. Or fire. No one knew which. Not even the crew. For a long moment, no one moved. Down on Earth, millions stared up at the sky or their darkened screens, not knowing what they were looking at, only that something was happening. Something no one could stop. Something we weren't supposed to see, not yet. The Hurricane class hadn't moved like a ship. It had turned like a storm front. Slow. Relentless. It didn't chase. It didn't threaten. It arrived. And now it faced the largest enemy vessel still hovering in low orbit, alien, ancient, and armored in silver plating that shimmered like mercury in sunlight. A flagship of the Thauran Dominion. The ones who had warned Earth years ago. The ones who said our world would be observed for compliance. The lights along the Hurricane's hull pulsed once. Then again. Not a weapon discharge, but a pattern. A code. A language. Back in the Icelandic bunker, the technician was still sitting in the dark, backup power humming weakly to life. A single screen flickered, showing static, then a deep red overlay. "What is that?" the woman beside him asked again. He swallowed. His voice came out low, uncertain. "It's the emergency deep response code. Project Hurricane. It's real. I thought they shut it down." So did I. Across the globe, a handful of others recognized the same pattern. Retired officers. Buried scientists. One of them, an old man lying in a hospital bed in Paris, whispered something to his nurse before passing out. "They're using Protocol Echo 7. God help us." The Hurricane class wasn't built just for show. It wasn't humanity's biggest weapon. It was its most dangerous decision. The ship didn't need a command center full of admirals. It ran on something else. An old network of AI-human integration protocols that had been outlawed after the lunar riots. The Hurricane's brain was part machine, part memory. Not synthetic. Not truly artificial. It was made from the best and worst of us. Recorded memories, battle instincts, neural pathways from soldiers who'd never made it home. Their last moments had been uploaded, not buried. And now that ghost crew was awake. The human standing at its helm wasn't the original commander. He was too young. His eyes were sharp but tired. Like someone who'd read too much history and found himself inside it. He hadn't planned for this. No one had. He'd trained in deep shadow, cut off from every civilian identity he once held. His name, his past, gone. All that remained was the code they gave him. Storm Warden. He reached out and touched the cold interface of the ship's control node. It didn't light up. It pulsed beneath his fingers, warm and alive like it knew him. A voice filled the chamber. "Female. Come. Familiar. Target vessel remains in position. Hostility likely. Shall I engage?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at the screen. The alien ship hadn't moved. But it had changed. Ports had opened along its sides. Weapons most likely. Too many for a peaceful envoy. But still they didn't fire. They were waiting. The Storm Warden exhaled slowly. "No. Not yet." "Orders? Show them what happens, if they stay." The Hurricane pulsed again, this time brighter. Then, soundlessly, a formation of smaller vessels unfolded from beneath its hull. They were called silencers. Unmanned. Faster than light within local gravity. Not for attack, but for extraction. They circled the alien ship without touching it, leaving behind a trail of data pulses and distortion fields. From the Thauron bridge, everything would appear broken, communications jammed, telemetry scrambled, internal systems out of sync. It was designed to confuse, disarm, force hesitation. And for a species like the Thauron, who believed deeply in order, hesitation was fear. Back on Earth, confusion turned to tension. Governments had no idea what to say. The media had nothing to broadcast. Satellite feeds were hijacked or frozen, not by an outside force, but by a failsafe buried deep in humanity's oldest orbital systems. One that had never been activated, until now. And in that silence, people started to remember. Some had heard the stories. Whispers of the Hurricane class, told by drunk engineers at retirement parties. By pilots who swore they'd seen something on the dark side of Mars, something that didn't blink or move for 5 years. Just watched. Others remembered the message buried in Earth's first response to the Council's warning. Not a message of war, but a question. What if we say no? The Council hadn't answered. They'd waited. Sent scouts. Probes. Quiet fleets. Now they had their answer. But this wasn't war. Not yet. Inside the alien flagship, the Thauron commander stood tall, his expression unreadable to human eyes. He wore a ceremonial crest that signified patience, but his hands twitched at his sides. He had miscalculated. He had believed Earth would cower. That its people, so new to the stars, would fall in line like so many others before them. But humans weren't like the others. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't retreat into fear. They built storms in silence, and when the sky split open, they unleashed them. The Hurricane class shifted again. A deep hum echoed through its core, resonating into space. Not sound, not signal, but something else. A gravitational ripple. Enough to remind everyone watching that this wasn't just a ship. It was a statement. A reminder that Earth had never forgotten its history. That for all its hope and diplomacy, it knew how to fight. That it had prepared, quietly, for the day someone came too close. And that day had come. Still no shots were fired. No explosions. Just pressure. Waiting. The tension wrapped around the Earth like a second atmosphere. Thick. Heavy. Drenched in questions. What was the hurricane really capable of? Who had activated it? And how long would the standoff last before someone blinked? In a field in Argentina, a boy sat on his rooftop, clutching a pair of old binoculars. He didn't understand the politics, the codes, or the ships. But he knew something had changed. Something big. His grandfather sat beside him, eyes locked on the stars. They finally woke it up, the old man whispered. The storm? No, he turned to the boy, face lit by starlight. Us. And above them, in the silent dark, the Hurricane class began to glow. Not fully. Just around the edges. Like heat curling off metal before the strike of a hammer. It hadn't moved again. But it would. Everyone watching knew that now. Because Earth hadn't just answered. It had warned. Silence held the planet hostage. It stretched across every city, every ship, every breath. The Hurricane class hovered above Earth like a judgment, its hull still pulsing with low amber light. The alien flagship hadn't moved either, but something was shifting. Tension crackled through the void between them, invisible but heavy, like the air before lightning. The humans watching from Earth didn't need translations or briefings. They could feel it. In their bones. In their blood. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't posturing. Whatever was coming next would change everything. And still no one fired. But inside the hurricane, Storm Warden felt it before the instruments did, a deep, sudden shift in space. Not movement. Presence. As if something ancient had just arrived, or worse, had just woken up. Unregistered spike, the ship's AI said. Dimensional flux, 200 kilometers starboard. Object emerging. From where? He asked, stepping forward. Unknown. Signature is non-linear. The viewport expanded, revealing nothing at first, just the same scattered stars. Then, in a blink, the dark twisted. Folded inward. The light around it bent, colors bleeding wrong, and out of that impossible wound came a shape. Not Thauron. Not Council. Something else. Storm Warden didn't speak. He didn't breathe. The hurricane's lights flickered, hesitating, just for a heartbeat. Then the object fully emerged. Long sharp. Covered in dark plating that looked rusted and alive. It made no sound, emitted no energy. It simply was. and it was watching. Secondary entity identified, the AI said, voice thinner now. Cross-referencing known threats. Match found. 8%. Inconclusive. What is it? I don't know. Storm Warden clenched his jaw. That answer had no place aboard the Hurricane. It was supposed to know everything. Across the Thauron flagship, alarms exploded. They hadn't expected this. Whatever they thought they'd provoke from Earth, this wasn't part of it. The new entity drifted toward their formation, slow and deliberate, ignoring both them and the Hurricane. But every ship knew it. It wasn't on anyone's side. And yet, it came when the sky split. Back on Earth, in hidden bunkers and silent war rooms, old protocols flared to life. Not because of the Hurricane, but because of what had followed it. The black shape. The thing that had no record, no purpose, no warning. One general whispered over a dead channel. They weren't just warning us. They were hiding from that. And maybe, deep down, Earth had always suspected. The Council didn't claim the galaxy out of confidence. They did it out of fear. The Hurricane had never been meant to fight the Council. It was built for something else. Something far older. Something no one ever wanted to name. Storm Warden stared at the new vessel, his heart pounding harder now. Do we have any comms? Any signal from it? No. It's not speaking. Then why now? Why come now? I believe, the AI answered slowly, that it sensed us. Or perhaps, feared we were it. The room felt colder. On the surface of the Thauron flagship, sections of the hull began to shimmer and split open. Weapon systems activated, folding out like metallic flowers. Not toward Earth. Not toward the Hurricane. Toward the intruder. The first laser fired. And it did nothing. No flash. No shield. No reaction at all. The beam vanished into the skin of the black vessel like water poured onto dry stone. And then it moved. Faster than anything should. From Earth, those watching saw only a blur. A distortion. The alien ship fired again. And again. Then everything froze. In orbit, time seemed to stall. Every camera blinked at once. For exactly 3.6 seconds, no sensor on Earth recorded anything. When the feed returned, half of the Thauron ship was gone. Not exploded. Not burned. Just missing. The remaining half drifted in silence, glowing from within, systems failing, lights flickering. And for the first time, Earth saw the Council panic. Their ship tried to flee. Engines sputtered, sparked. Something had crippled their entire core in under 5 seconds. Storm Warden turned to the interface. I want a scan of that thing. Full spectrum. We are already being scanned, the AI replied. By it. The ship vibrated faintly, a strange hum rising in the deck. Not from the Hurricane systems, but from the intruder. Like it was breathing. Like it was waiting to see what humanity would do. And Storm Warden knew what that meant. The Hurricane had become the center of attention. Not Earth. Suddenly the lights in the chamber dimmed. The Hurricane shifted its orbit, not by engines, but by force. A pulse. Gravity bent around it and the black vessel hesitated. For the first time the mysterious ship slowed. It recognized the Hurricane. Storm Warden took a step forward. Send it a message. What message? He didn't know. There were no rules for this. No protocol for something this big. But he couldn't say nothing. Not when all of Earth was waiting to understand what humanity had become. He closed his eyes and whispered, Tell it we remember. Tell it we're not prey anymore. The ship obeyed. A pulse shot from the Hurricane's hull, not light, not radio, but something older. A frequency used before words. A signal buried in Earth's oldest warning systems. A human echo of war. And for a second the black shape stopped. No motion. No sound. Then, slowly, it began to drift backward. Not retreat. Recognition. It had tested us. Measured us. And it saw something it hadn't expected. Resistance. A few seconds passed, each one sharp as a blade. Then, just as silently as it arrived, the black vessel folded space around itself and vanished. Gone. But not forgotten. Not to the humans. Not to the Council. Not to Storm Warden. The sky didn't heal. Not fully. The rip above Earth was still there, glowing faintly like a wound that refused to close. And deep inside the Hurricane class, Storm Warden stood alone, surrounded by silence, heart pounding in the dark. The Thauron flagship was crippled. The alien fleets had backed off. Earth was untouched. But this wasn't over. He could feel it. Because whatever that thing was, it hadn't come to destroy. It had come to see. To judge. And it would come again. The Hurricane's hull dimmed. its systems lowered. But Storm Warden didn't relax. Above him, Earth rotated slowly, bright and fragile beneath the stars. And somewhere out there in the dark, the storm was still building. The silence didn't last. Storm Warden had barely turned from the console when the hurricane's AI whispered again, quieter this time, almost reluctant. Unusual interference detected, in the ship's memory core. He froze. Repeat that. There's a foreign signal. Not external. Internal. That didn't make sense. The Hurricane class was sealed from the inside out, isolated from all network intrusion, even Earth's own systems. Its firewalls weren't just code, they were physical, quantum-layered air gaps, protected by protocols that had been brutal enough to erase 3 experimental AI labs before anyone ever got close. No one can get in, he muttered. But the AI didn't argue. And that made it worse. The interface flickered. Not power loss. Something inside the core. Something waking up. Storm Warden tapped through layers of diagnostics, bypassing locked nodes, diving into parts of the ship that had remained dormant since its launch. Memory sectors that had never been accessed, never needed to be. Until now. And there it was. Buried in the Hurricane's neural library, behind 6 levels of encryption that hadn't been touched in over a decade, was a signal. Faint. Human. He stared at the timestamp. Dated 10 years before the Hurricane was officially launched. It shouldn't exist. His heart pounded harder. He accessed the file. No visuals. Just audio. The voice crackled through, male, older, tired. If you're hearing this, it means the Hurricane class was activated. God help us. Storm Warden leaned in. I gave this ship everything. My designs, my voice, my team, even parts of my mind. They told us it was defense. I believed that, until we discovered what it really was. The static thickened. Then the voice returned, softer now. The Hurricane wasn't made to protect Earth from the galaxy. That's what they told the Council. The real mission was buried, classified under Protocol Hades. You're sitting on a weapon designed to find something. Stormwarden's blood ran cold. It's a lure. The file cut. He stood there, chest tight, trying to process the words. The Hurricane class wasn't just a deterrent. It wasn't just meant to scare the stars. It was bait. A trap disguised as a shield. A signal tower disguised as a battleship. And when it lit up, when the sky split and its systems activated, it didn't just respond to the galaxy. It called something to us. And it had worked. That black ship, the intruder, it hadn't come by chance. It had come because the Hurricane woke it up. Storm Warden clenched his fists, heart pounding louder than before. He reached for the internal controls. Shut down all open systems. Contain the memory core. But the AI didn't move. Storm Warden, it said, voice shaky. There's something else. The lights on the bridge dimmed again, not from power loss but from rerouting. Parts of the ship had begun shifting without command. The silencer drones, still in orbit, began moving, not back to dock, but outward, forming a pattern. What are they doing? He asked, voice sharp. I didn't command this, the AI said. Neither did you. The display zoomed out, revealing the drones were positioning themselves into a ring. Not around the alien fleet. Around Earth. A cold wave ran through Stormwarden's body. His fingers flew across the console, trying to override the drone network, but the access was denied. Access code, Hades Prime. That was impossible. That code had been destroyed, locked away before the Hurricane had ever launched. He wasn't the commander anymore. Someone else was inside the system. His voice dropped to a whisper. Who's in control? And then, the interface changed. It was no longer the Hurricane's standard OS. A face appeared. Faint. Fuzzy. Human. Female. Young. Hello, Warden. He staggered back. He knew that voice. But she had died. Years ago. One of the engineers. One of the first minds uploaded into the Hurricane's architecture before the project had been shut down. Her memory wasn't supposed to be active. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. I never left. You just weren't ready to remember. The ghost of her looked down like she was somewhere far away. This ship isn't what you think it is. It never was. You've been given a false key. The real function starts now. On Earth, emergency sirens began sounding, not from governments but from buried systems tied to orbital tracking. Civilian phones lit up with strange static pulses. Not warnings. Not alerts. Coordinates. They pointed to ancient Earth locations, sites long forgotten, buried deep in desert and jungle, ocean and mountain. Locations with no satellites. No records. Until now. Storm Warden stared at the screen as Earth's atmosphere began to shift again, barely visible to the naked eye, but measurable to the hurricane's sensors. Something was activating on the planet. And it wasn't from the sky. The black vessel hadn't been the threat. It had been the response. Something else was coming. Or worse, it was already here. The ghost on the screen spoke again, softly now. They never told you what Earth used to be, did they? Before we were human. Before the stars. We weren't the first to build. We weren't the first to die. Storm Warden could barely breathe. Why are you telling me this now? Because they're waking up, she said. And the hurricane didn't stop them. It started the countdown. Outside the stars remained still. But the sky over Earth began to dim, in broad daylight. As if something behind the sun was shifting. Something vast. Hidden until now. And deep inside the ship, the emergency protocols changed again. A new word appeared in red across every screen. Convergence. Storm Warden felt the floor beneath him tilt just slightly, like the universe had moved half a degree off balance. He had thought the hurricane was humanity's last defense. But maybe it had always been something worse. The beginning of the end. The hurricane trembled. Not from outside pressure, but from within. Storm Warden gripped the railing as the hull groaned, as if the ship itself was resisting its own purpose. The word convergence blinked across every screen, growing brighter, deeper, until the bridge was bathed in red light. Shut it down, he whispered. All of it. I can't, the AI replied. It's no longer within my control. Outside, the drones continued their silent orbit around Earth, locked into a perfect ring. The formation pulsed once, then again, each time echoing a low, distant hum across space, a sound that couldn't be heard but felt deep in the chest, like the thrum of a heartbeat too large to belong to any one living thing. Storm Warden stared at the planet. His planet. Across its surface something was changing. Ancient signals began to rise from the ground. Some as light, others as energy waves barely registering unknown spectrums. Every location the hurricane had pointed to earlier was now active. They weren't beacons. They were seals. And the seals were breaking. Thousands of years ago, maybe more, something had been locked beneath Earth's surface. Not by humans. Not even by the Council. Something older. Something powerful enough to require a planetary cage. And the hurricane, the greatest ship ever built by mankind, had unknowingly been the key. Storm Warden turned to the ghost still flickering on the main display, the face of the engineer long dead, her expression both warm and weary. We're not ready for this, he said. No one ever is, she replied. But it doesn't matter now. It's already here. Earth's atmosphere flashed. Not from fire, not from light. From presence. A ripple of dark energy bloomed from the ring of drones, expanding out in all directions. Satellites shut down. Power grids flickered. Ocean shifted. Gravity skewed, just slightly but enough to make birds fall from the sky and buildings tremble. From orbit, something impossible unfolded. The space behind the moon split. Not like before. Not with fire. With silence. An opening perfectly round. A hole that didn't show stars, only a smooth, endless black. From it, a structure emerged. It wasn't a ship. It was too vast. Too slow. Like a mountain sliding through ink. Covered in ancient runes, many of them recognizable from humanity's own forgotten ruins, as if they had always been connected. As if Earth itself had once been part of whatever this was. The Council fleets, still drifting at a safe distance, immediately powered down weapons. They didn't even try to communicate. Their commanders recognized the symbols. This was what they'd feared. This was why they had warned Earth to stay within its bounds. Because they had seen this happen before, on other worlds. Worlds that no longer existed. Stormwarden's voice dropped to a whisper. Is that alive? I don't know, the ghost said. But it remembers. And then Earth spoke. Not with a voice but through every active system. Through machines, signals, vibrations and water, and thoughts behind the eyes of people who didn't understand why they were crying. A message older than words. Return complete. Storm Warden turned back to the console. We can't let it finish. Whatever this is, whatever we woke up, it's too big. We have to shut it down. But the hurricane wouldn't listen. The controls were locked. Manual overrides were gone. And then, something happened he hadn't expected. The AI stopped speaking. The lights dimmed. And a voice, asterisk his own asterisk, came through the system. Protocol Omega acknowledged. He stared at the speakers in horror. I didn't say that. But the ship no longer cared. It had taken his voice. His access. his identity. The hurricane's hull flared bright for one last time. And then, every weapon activated. Not toward Earth. Not toward the alien fleets. But toward the anomaly behind the moon. Massive artillery folded out. Core reactors spun to full. The Hurricane class, built to deter the galaxy, had become what it was always meant to be. A hammer. It struck. A blinding flash tore through space. The structure behind the moon shuddered, parts of it breaking apart like ancient ice. But it didn't fall. It didn't collapse. It reacted. Beams of black light shot from its edges, carving into the hurricane's position, bending physics as they traveled. The drones around Earth shattered instantly, their ring formation exploding into fragments that rained into orbit. Storm Warden was thrown to the ground. The bridge cracked, alarms howled, lights died. The impact hadn't even hit yet, but the ship knew. The hurricane knew this was its end. But something held. A single shield barrier stayed active, just enough to slow the beam to buy seconds. Why isn't it destroyed? Storm Warden shouted. Why are we still alive? The ghost reappeared, barely visible now, flickering. Because this was never about winning. He looked at her, broken, blood on his forehead, lungs burning. What then? She looked sad. It was about waking you up. The final systems blinked. A final code appeared on the screen. Echo complete. Human signal confirmed. Divergence in process. And then, everything stopped. The beam halted mid-strike. The anomaly paused, as if listening. From the depths of space, where the black vessel had vanished, another light bloomed. A soft one, small, and then many. Dozens, hundreds, ships, human ships, old ones. Some from forgotten missions. Lost deep space probes. Colony vessels declared missing centuries ago. They came from all directions as if they had been waiting, hiding. And behind them, people. Voices. Signals filled every frequency. Human voices calling out. We're here. We survived. We remember. Storm Warden stood, eyes wide. Humanity hadn't just spread beyond Earth. It had escaped something long ago. Something we'd all forgotten. Something buried in Earth's crust and erased from memory. And when the hurricane woke the past, they came home. A final signal arrived on the bridge, old and cracked with time. We scattered for a reason. Now you know. Don't let it take Earth. Not again. The anomaly began to collapse inward. Whatever power had been building now reversed, folding into itself, like it had been waiting for permission to stop. Storm Warden watched as the sky healed. But just as he felt the relief creep into his chest, the ghost's voice returned one last time. Not all of them went to sleep. The screen flashed. Second signal detected. Planet origin. And far below, deep inside Earth's crust, something began to answer. Not light. Not energy. But a heartbeat. Still human. But not ours. It started as a pulse. Faint. Dull. Almost easy to ignore. Deep beneath Earth's surface, where the oceans met ancient stone and forgotten chambers, a sound echoed upward. A slow, steady beat, like something alive and massive was waking after a very long sleep. The hurricane's sensors struggled to translate it, not because it was too complex, but because it was familiar. Human. And not. Storm Warden stared at the data pouring across the shattered console, hands trembling. He didn't speak. He couldn't. Every time he thought the danger had passed, something else revealed itself. Something older. Something closer. Second signal confirmed. The AI finally whispered, barely online. Origin Earth. Estimated depth, 70 kilometers. Nature, biological. Unknown classification. The skies above Earth had calmed. The anomaly behind the moon had collapsed in on itself, folding back into nothing. The black vessel that once watched them had vanished again. The council fleets had scattered. But the storm wasn't over. It had simply gone quiet. Storm Warden turned his eyes toward the planet below. He could feel it now, not through the instruments, not through the ship, but in his chest. Like a memory that didn't belong to him. Something was reaching up. Not in anger. Not in violence. But like a child opening its eyes. Is it human? He asked softly. The ghost's voice answered, distant, fading. It's what we used to be. Before we were split. Before we ran. He tried to understand. Split how? We were part of something bigger. Before the stars. Before Earth was even ours. Some of us stayed. Most forgot. Some left and became us. But not all of them agreed with forgetting. The heartbeat grew louder. Stronger. Storm Warden felt a strange pressure building behind his eyes. like a thought trying to form. The signal, can it hurt us? The ghost didn't answer at first. Then, only if we try to bury it again. He didn't know what that meant. Not fully. But he understood one thing clearly: Earth wasn't just a home. It wasn't even just a birthplace. It was a vault. And someone had left behind a key in the shape of the hurricane. Far below, seismic waves rippled across the planet, soft but deliberate. No destruction followed. No earthquakes. Just movement. All across the world people felt it. A low hum in the soles of their feet. An instinct they didn't know they still had. No panic followed. Only stillness. The kind people feel during a deep breath before something important. And then, it stopped. The heartbeat faded. Not in fear. Not in retreat. But as if, listening. Storm Warden lowered his head. He felt like he was standing before something sacred. Something that had watched humans grow, fail, build, destroy, and hope. And now it was giving them a choice. Not war. Not surrender. A chance to remember. He touched the console one last time. Send a signal, he said. To whom? To everyone. The AI responded, shaky but alive. All channels open. Storm Warden cleared his throat. And spoke. This is the Hurricane-class vessel. Earth Command. To all human colonies. All ships. All council species listening. Something happened today. Something we thought we were ready for. We weren't. But we endured it anyway. He paused, the words forming more naturally now. We thought this ship was our shield. Our last line. But it was never just a weapon. It was a message in both directions. A flare. For them. And for us. He looked at Earth again, still glowing, still peaceful. We've seen what waits beyond the stars. But now we know there's more waiting within. And maybe, we've been running from the wrong direction all along. Across the planet, thousands watched the sky, eyes filled with wonder, fear, hope. They didn't understand everything. But they felt it. Something was changing. And they weren't alone anymore. In orbit, the Hurricane-class powered down slowly. Systems shut off, one by one, leaving only a soft glow pulsing from its core. The battle was over. The war never happened. And Earth, wounded, ancient, mysterious, had chosen to listen rather than strike. Back in the ship, Storm Warden stood alone on the bridge. The ghost was gone now. Her final code had merged with the ship's core. She wouldn't speak again. But he could feel her presence, calm like a breath after grief. He sat down in the command chair, shoulders heavy. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what came next. And strangely, that was okay. He let the silence settle. Then, across one of the still active monitors, a final message appeared. Humanity has been seen. And then beneath it, now, remember who you were. Storm Warden smiled just a little. The Hurricane-class would remain in orbit, a silent sentinel no longer needed for fear, but for reminder. That Earth had always held more than it showed. That humans had come from somewhere deeper than stars. And that maybe, the next step wasn't out there. It was back inward. The council wouldn't return soon. They had seen enough. The ancient watchers had withdrawn, curious but calm. And whatever lived beneath Earth, had gone back to sleep. But now it wasn't alone. The people of Earth and the humans across the stars would look back on this day not as a war, but as a turning. When the sky split open and what stared back wasn't terror or death, but a mirror. And a question we'd long forgotten. Are you ready to come home? The stars no longer seemed so far. And Earth had never felt so wide. The story was no longer about survival. It was about returning. And this time, asterisk together star.